Hi guys, welcome to the session on Coffee with Prab. And today we have our special guest. Actually, not a guest, he's my guru. He was the one who basically helped me to clear my CISSP, and he actually the person who gave me a job in the information security governance. And today, where I am today, whatever I'm getting a recognition on CISSP because of Rahul sir only. So Mr. Rahul Kokcha is here. He having a 25 plus year of experience in cybersecurity, and he started a journey with Microsoft. Then he moved to firewalls and then governance, and um, he was a well-known name in the market. He's always maintained his profile, a stealth profile, and all the stealth profile. So he always remain untraceable. But it is an opportunity, and it is an honor for us to have him in this particular session. And we're definitely going to share his wisdom and thoughts on how to implement practically ISO 27001 in the organization. I'm a bit emotional today because today where I am stands up because of you only. And he's not only my information security guru, he's also my life guru. Whenever I am always stuck, he's the person who always available. And in my bad time, in my good time, he's always there. So thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so happy. And it's like you have also like worked hard and you only need a little guidance to walk a mile. So
No, sir.
it's
Practically, I know
it's the efforts
how
as well.
much you drive through the things and all that. And today I'm CSS because of you. And definitely Shishir sir, KP was there and all that. But building a
Mhm.
benchmark, establishing a foundation is not because without you, I don't think so. Today, whatever I'm doing, even today, I teach your same cryptography concept in my CISSP sessions. So I still remember that, substitute transposition and
Yeah.
substitution. Your video is there in YouTube. So I always refer that videos when I cover my cryptography sessions.
I don't know if that video is still live on YouTube. I never watched it again.
We cannot take the name of the company, but I think it is still there.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm still using that same concept of ABCD as a language plus one,
Yeah,
transposition,
okay.
substitutions, and all that. Then start with symmetric and asymmetric.
Thank you so much.
And team
I'm so
today,
humbled.
no, sir, you
Like
deserve, you
the
deserve.
the way you described me.
Uh, No, no, we have a team. So when I worked, Mr. and Rahul Kokcha sir and all that, we used to call him as a, he used to have this bald style and all that. So we always say Shaitan, Khopdi and all that. And anything can he bring the idea and it can bring trouble to us, but we have to execute the projects. But thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
My official nickname.
Yeah. When he smile, it means something is wrong. So, sir, today actually there was a lot of gimmick regarding ISO 27001. Okay, there's a lot of PPTs are available. There's a lot of content is available, but I myself was struggling with 27001 implementations and all that. So I used to call you multiple times, sir, ye kya hai? Sir, ye kya hai? So my question is basically, sir, this video is watched by those beginners, by GRC professionals and all that. How this video is going to be different from others?
Okay, so I will try to demystify, simplify. See, and probably you know it, and you know me personally, and the people who know me, they know me for simplification. I try to simplify the stuff so that one can understand it in a very simple way. And the simple things are practical, and you can sustain them. And if
Yeah,
you complicate the way the consultants do, fine. So probably they are trying to just justify the money they are charging, but that does not solve the many of the problems of the organization. Fine, except
true.
certification, it becomes a challenge for them to maintain. So I try to simplify the things. Here also I will try to simplify and will give you the practical, because I'm being into this domain and doing the implementation and assessments for the ISMS and the other standards. So I will try to simplify the things, give a practical guidance on how you can achieve the 27001 compliance.
Thank you, sir. Sir, those are not aware about Mr. Raul's profile is we have a two type of CISOs in this industry. One is called practical CISO and one is called theoretical CISO. So the one you're right now looking in this particular session, Mr. Rahul Kokcha, he's a practical CISO because he basically managing a fund of more than 20 million, and the company where he worked in past, and he was handle all kind of projects. And when the external vendors come for an audit, when they try to play with the words and all that, he know how to use those things, and who is practical, who is theoretical. So today this session is not driven by any theoretical CISO and all that. He is the guy who practically implemented things. And it is really honor for us to sharing his thoughts and process about his experience on 27001. And I'm sure after this session you will get a great insight. And the one thing about sir is basically we always look for the we say security is driven by the simple to implement. We got called as a keep it simple as a principle. So he is a person who follower of that. He makes sure, okay, not only consultant, but whoever is basically reaching out to Mr. Rahul sir and all that, he keep the things simple so that it is easy to understand. And security itself is run on the keep it simple concept, right sir?
Yes, absolutely.
So sir,
And if it is
कैसे
not
शुरू करें?
simple, if it's
हाँ,
not simple to, then it will not be practically like feasible to maintain for a long time.
agree,
Right?
agree.
Even security principle itself says the security has to be simple. Right? If you look at uh, the the security architecture and principles of the CISSP, it also says you have to be simple.
Agree. And sir, how to start? If I'm a beginner, I have a zero
Yeah.
visibility. Okay, there's the standards are available and all that. So if I want to start ISO 27001 in the organization, how to
Mhm.
start, sir?
Okay. So you want to get a perspective of an employee willing or trying to make the organization certified, or you are looking from a consultant perspective because
Anything,
there's a
anything. Like
great difference. Okay.
now, example like I got a project. Okay,
Hmm.
Prab, I want to implement 27001 in the organization. Okay, now
Okay.
I went to YouTube and searched how to implement 27001 in the organization.
Hmm.
So from that perspective, how to start?
Okay. So even if you are taking this as an internal project, right, or you're coming as a consultant, the first thing you would want to understand is where do we stand today? To understand where do we stand today, you have to look at the standard, what the standard requirements are, and how you carry out your operations, how they're aligned with the standards requirement. So that is called as a gap assessment. Right? So gap assessment is nothing but we just determine where we are, right? And we know where we want to be. Right? We want to be 27001 compliant. So that will tell you the gap report. Now, if you look for the consultant's perspective, they will create a huge gap report, will give you the lots of action items, action trackers. Those things are not needed. And you just need to have a simplified version of what are the actions you need to take, and what are the gaps you have, means what are the things you need to improve on. For example, you may not have the policy communicated. You may have a policy in place, but it's not communicated. It is not acknowledged by people. And so you know, okay, that I have a document, I need to roll it out, I need to initiate a communication so that I can capture the acknowledgement of my staff. So to that level, look at the controls of the 27001, look at the requirements of 27001, and see where do we stand, what we need, what is need to be done, and to meet the compliance. So that is the first step. Second step, I will say, is again, you can start with a risk assessment. Risk assessment will tell you what are the areas you need to prioritize. Right?
Example.
And example is you may have some issues with your, maybe I give you the practical example. I had a customer who was having a challenge of not able to trace if the patches have been implemented because they had an administrator who was managing their the patch management server, right? And that administrator has left the company. They don't have the password of that machine, and they know the patches are being rolled out. It's all automated, but they don't know whether they are compliant or not. And so that becomes a high risk thing because you don't know whether your servers are being patched properly or not. They had no other alternate mechanism. Right? And server is a critical asset. Right? If it is not patched, that becomes your first priority to solve. Second is, for example, I give the example of acknowledgement of the policy. Right? So that is, if you look at the how from the priority perspective, you will fix the issues where you see the compromise can happen. fine, rather than like meeting all the requirements of the like making people aware of the policy and all. Fine. So that is how you have to identify your risks. Fine. And again, definitely not communicating policy to the people is also leads to some level of risk because people are not aware of what to do, how to do. They may go wrong while carrying out certain operations. Fine. They may. So we need to tell them the expectations. Fine. So that is again, if they don't know, the people are not aware. That's also a risk. But that
Okay.
risk is much lower than server not being cached and which is published online. So this way, I will say, like first start with the gap assessment. If I like where all we have the missing pieces, fine. Then prioritize them based on the risk. Find what we need to be addressed first, and then start fixing them one by distribute them, monitor them, fix them, and then you are ready at the high level. We'll talk about the nitty gritties of 27001, like in the like in detail. But this is at the high level. This is what I will recommend how to start with.
Okay. So people have this dilemma about first to do scoping or first to do, like, we have a SOA as gap assessment, and or we do risk assessment. So you recommend us to do first risk assessment, but for that
Gap
also we need a
assessment.
scope.
First
Sorry.
is gap assessment. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, sir, if I want to start a gap assessment also, do we maintain any kind of a questionnaires? Do we have some generic questionnaire? Because I've seen a lot of details in templates are there which talk about this a list of questions. So what is the recommendation for you? If someone
Like
want to create a if someone want to
yes.
create a scoping assessment document and all that, so what
Exactly.
ideally details should be there? Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to scoping, the scoping is the first thing I will say. Fine. So even if they're saying the gap assessment, gap has to be conducted within a scope.
Hmm.
Fine. And from where the scope will come, you need to understand your requirements. And the requirements can be regulatory requirement, can
Hmm.
be a customer requirement. If a
Hmm.
customer, you are serving a customer, have a contract with a customer says you have to be compliant with 27001.
Hmm.
And if in your scope of implementation you are excluding that business,
Hmm.
that will not serve the purpose of the organization.
Hmm.
Organization objectives will not be met. Fine. So that's first to identify the requirements of your organization. Why you are going for 27001. Fine. Based on that, you will set up the scope, which business units, which locations. Fine. I have to include in the scope of the 27001. Then we'll come to the identify the gaps and doing the risk assessment. Fine. So first is the scoping.
Okay.
Then coming to like a checklist. Fine. Your standard should be a checklist.
Okay.
You don't have to have a fancy long 100 to 100 points checklist. Right? Standard has a 93 controls in Annex A and clause 4 to clause 10. When clause 4 to clause 10 is mostly what lies with the GRC team because it talks about the policy, it talks about the performance evaluation, it talks about the internal audit, and risk assessment. But the remaining Annex A controls are distributed across HR function, physical security, facilities management, IT, vendor management. And so there you need to like probably identify which areas are being handled by which team. And then but all what is need to be done is given in the standard. And standard is like I don't think it will have more than 40 pages. So that is sufficient to start with.
Okay. So, do we need to buy the standards or do we need to buy this requirement or what exactly?
Okay. So buying a standard is definitely if you want to refer to, you need to buy. It's a licensed copy. It's a copyrighted item. You cannot simply distribute. So if an organization don't have the access to the 27001 in any way, then they need to buy. And it's as it is a copyrighted material.
Okay.
Right? But to get certified, if you're engaging a consultant who is performing all these activities, who is guiding you to the compliance, then the organization don't need to buy the standard. Fine, there is no such
Understood.
requirement.
Understood.
Fine, to be compliant or to be certified, and what is the requirement given in the standard is what we need to comply with. Audit
Okay.
will be conducted only against what is given in the standard, and
Okay.
the standard does not say that the organization has to have a copy of it.
And when you talk about this 4 to 10 clause, these are the mandatory clause. You cannot skip that.
Yes, yes. Clause
Okay.
4 to clause 10 is mandatory, but there are certain optional components there, which is given as a note.
Okay.
So note does not form as a part of the requirement. That's why they are added as a note. Otherwise, from clause 4 to clause 10, each and every statement is important and you have to comply with.
Okay. So, sir, so gap assessment once we're done, we basically get a report about like how long it take for to perform the gap assessment.
It may take 2 weeks time, 3 weeks time, depending upon how big the scope is. Fine. For example, you have multiple locations. You have to go to Bangalore, to probably China, to like Ireland. Fine. And if you have a small organization like at one location, probably 1 week is enough.
Okay.
Fine. Depends upon how many business function locations are in scope, because you have to understand how those activities are being carried out. Fine. And then only you can identify where you have the gaps.
ठीक है अब once we're done with the gap assessment, we get our information about according to 4 to 10 clauses. We have some clause already implemented, but if there's no clause was implemented, let's say example, we have to start from scratch there. So definitely scope of assessment will give me the zero visibility that there's no
Yes.
control. So then what are the next steps are after that?
Okay. So next step would be first thing will be the management support. Fine. And standard also has a particular clause about leadership. Clause number 5 talks about leadership. When the leaders need to support you, they need to provide you the resources, they need to communicate the importance of ISMS. Fine. So that is the first thing you need to do. You need to have the buy-in from the top, the management. For example, if you need to understand like who leads this effort, right? From the organization business perspective, management perspective. And in the large organization, it can be different. Right? In the large organization, it's not always CEO has to be there. Fine.
Okay.
In a medium-sized organization, again, depends. In a small organization, yes, you can directly reach out to the CEO. So you need to understand like who is that person who will be the sponsor of this entire effort in the organization. They need to identify, you need to have a meeting with him, make them understand what is needed, what support you need from them, how much time do you need from them. Right? If that is aligned, then you can proceed with the rest of the things. So first thing I will say you start with is identify the risk.
Okay.
And risk is very easy to identify. Don't have to again complicate this too much. Again, there are two primary methods you can identify this based on. One is the people go with the asset-based risk assessment. When they identify all the assets, they make an asset register. From each asset, they identify the value of the asset, then the threats and vulnerabilities to the assets. Fine. And based on that, they identify the likelihood and impact of the compromise.
Okay.
Fine. And they identify the risk. They calculate the risk. Again, there is no set formula. There is no set template that you have to follow. Fine. But yes, you have to capture a few important things. Fine. For example, how do you calculate the risk so that like you always reach out to the same answer. So that is called as a methodology, basically. So what is your methodology? Methodology.
Okay.
The methodology is nothing but if 10 people are following the methodology, conducting the risk assessment 10 times, means total 100 times, the result should be same. Right? So that is what the advantage of methodology is. So we have to create a methodology, what suits us. Fine. Again, if you want to refer to the different frameworks in the industry, 27005 is there, 31,000 is there, and there are many other frameworks that are available. CIS benchmark, the CIS, the Center for Internet Security, has their own risk assessment methodology. Fine. So there are many methodologies available in the market. So you can pick up any one, you can customize, you can make a combination of 2-3 methodology, what suits you. Fine. Okay. Depending upon what information you have available.
Okay.
Fine. But what is the requirement of the standard is that risk methodology needs to be defined, risks need to be identified, fine, evaluated, assessed in the situation where that asset is being used in the organization. Risk only need to be identified. We need to identify the risk treatment options. Risk treatment options are like you either accept the risk, mitigate the risk, transfer the risk, or avoid the risk. Fine. So what option you want to take? Fine. Whether you want to means if you have to apply the controls, that means you are mitigating the risk. So then once you apply the controls, then what is the resultant risk? Fine. Because after you apply the controls, either likelihood will go down, fine, or the impact will go down. If both of them, if none of it is going down, that means the control is not effective. Fine. So that means applying control will reduce the risk. Fine. So what is the reduced risk? For example, risk was high earlier. After applying the controls, it becomes medium or low. Whether that medium or low is acceptable or not. Fine. And if it is acceptable, we will just close that risk item. That's it.
So, sir,
If it is not acceptable,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah.
Sorry. No, go ahead. So,
So
sorry.
if it is not acceptable, then we may further require more controls to treat this. Now, one catch here is you may identify 50 risks, and you may have 50 different risk owners. Now, when we say there are 50 risks, for each and every risk, there's an owner, and owner has to accept the risk finally. Fine. So what we do to simplify this is we define the acceptable threshold, which is agreed upon by the management. For example, the low and very low risk are acceptable to us, medium and high, what we want to treat. Fine. So that means we don't need explicit approval if the resultant risk, or which is also called as a residual risk, fine, is coming out to be low. But it doesn't mean if there's a medium risk that cannot be accepted. Even the medium risk can be accepted, but there are some certain situations where business want to live with that risk because they see the the benefits are more than the risk.
Understood.
Fine. So it's not that all this has to be addressed. All the controls has to be implemented before you are ready for certification.
Okay.
The standard only says this has to be identified, fine, evaluated, owned. You need to know what you're accepting, what you are mitigating, what you're transferring. Fine. There will never be a situation that all risks are addressed and then we go for certification.
Sir, Abhi, when you're talking about this asset-based risk assessment, you said about any example you have for the asset-based, like, if someone want to understand with example.
Yeah. For example, let's take example of a shopping site. Fine. So for the e-commerce company, fine, they have one e-commerce portal, fine, which again the entire ecosystem of the e-commerce hosting. And they have the application, they have the server, they have the network and everything. So that is one aspect, fine. So this is so you determine what is the value of the asset to the organization. Fine. So definitely on the confidentiality level, it will be high because it will have the customer information. On the integrity level, it will be high because you don't want unauthorized changes to that portal. And availability has to be high because that's your primary bread and butter. When if that portal is down, you cannot do the business. But compare it with the desktop computer or the backup system. And backup server means like a server which is conducting a backup, like Veritas or something. So definitely that server or even the laptop of your staff is also important for you. Fine, but doesn't have the same value of the asset, doesn't have the same criticality, doesn't have the same sensitivity. Fine. So we need to identify the assets, assign a value to it, depending upon again what your parameters are. Those parameters are very flexible. ISO does not dictate anything.
Okay.
ISO even does not say that the asset has to be identified and risk has to be calculated based on the assets. When this is the new thing, basically, in 2005 version of 27001 standard, it was asset based. From 2013 and 2022 version, when it is no longer a mandatory to go to the asset based approach. And that's why I'm saying there are two approaches. So first is the asset based. You can go with identify the assets, give the value to it, identify the value of the asset, and go through the risk assessment process. Second is sometimes when we go through the assets, right, and it becomes very cumbersome because you may have 100 servers, but each server may have different value. Right? So it becomes challenging to set up your entire risk assessment method.
True.
So another easy method can be, what do you see as a risk? Fine. I see a cyber attack as a risk. Fine. So you can straight away start from this, that cyber attack is a risk for my organization. What is the likelihood the cyber attack can happen? Fine. What is the impact cyber attack will cause in my organization? Fine. And then multiply these two values to calculate the risk. Fine. Means you don't have to even start with the assets. You can directly start with the risk statement. Fine. Or start with the business functions. And I have e-commerce as a business function or the service. Fine. And what are the risks I see which apply to my this business unit.
Okay.
Fine. So that we can start with as well. Fine. That's why I'm saying like there are two methods: asset based and directly you can call it a service based, function based, fine, or generic.
Okay.
So you can adopt any of these two methods. There is no fixed way the ISO 27001 defines that you have to calculate the risk in this particular way only. And it says you need to define the methodology what suits to your organization
Understood.
and then follow it.
So once we're done with the risk assessment, sir, what is the next step then?
Okay. Once you identify the risk, you need to again further those treatment options you have, the controls need to be implemented. Fine. So distribute the responsibilities of implementation of the control. You cannot do everything yourself. And there will be certain items HR need to take care of. For example, if the background checks are being performed properly, security awareness has been done appropriately, when that the relevant teams has to take care of. IT will have some responsibilities. Physical security will have some responsibilities. Your supply chain, the supplier management will have some responsibilities. The vendor management team. So distribute them. Again, assign the timelines. Talk to them. Help them in implementing those new requirements to comply with that standard. And then you're done with the Annex A controls, basically.
Okay.
For the ISMS framework, when the clause 4 to clause 10 is generally people sometimes refer to as a framework as well, but framework has a different meaning basically.
Exactly.
Framework basically defines the guidelines, high level guidelines of like to achieve something. Fine. This is the difference in the standard and the framework. ISO 27001 is also popularly called as a framework, but this is a standard. The difference is framework does not define specific requirements. You don't get certified against a framework. Fine. The standard defines the requirements. You get certified against the standard.
True.
And so, but clause 4 to clause 10, it sets the operations of the ISMS in an organization. And that's why it is commonly also called as the ISMS framework.
Okay.
So those clause 4 to clause 10 are the items most likely to be done by your JRC or the ISMS team. Right? Okay. With the help of your top management and the other relevant business units, wherever you have the interactions. But this clause 4 to clause 10 talks about how to set up, how to operate, how to establish, operate, evaluate, improve your ISMS. So the primary responsibility goes to the ISMS team. Okay. Annex A controls talks about the people control, physical controls, and again, vendor management controls, technical controls, that goes to specific departments. So Understood. You can distribute the controls, help them, provide them the guidelines, give them the training. Fine. Again, depends upon the who is at who needs to require what level of support. Fine. Okay. Support them once they are able to close all those action items. You're ready. You're not ready for certifications. You're ready for the next step.
So what is the next step, sir?
Yeah. Next step would be, see, you identified the risks. You have given the risk treatment, risk mitigation plan to the relevant teams and expect them to close them. If they have mitigated all the risks or may not be able to mitigate all, but most of them, some of them are accepted by the risk owners, but you know the state of the each and every item. So once this is done, then you will go for the evaluation, whether how well, how efficiently those controls are working. Fine. So the ISMS or the ISO 27001 follows the cycle called as a plan, do, check, and act.
Yeah.
Right. So planning is what? The gap assessment is a planning. Identifying the risk assessment methodology is a planning. Conducting a risk assessment is do. Mitigating those risks is do. Then the third step comes is a check. Then you have to go and evaluate how well it is mitigated, how effectively my controls are implemented. That's a check. Fine. If you see some gaps, then you have to act upon it.
Okay. So, once we we get the risk treatment plan and all that, then then what is the next step after that? We creating a manual or what exactly?
Okay. So one of the risk item will also be, if you don't have a policy, that is also a risk, that you don't have any
Hmm.
specific requirements, like how
Hmm.
to, like for example, you don't have any set standard for backup, right?
Hmm.
You don't have any set guidelines for the password management. And
Hmm.
so that is something, is again will come as a part of the gap assessment, and that has to be addressed.
Hmm.
So policy, setting up a policy will also be aligned with your risk assessment. And for example, if we talk about the password policy, right, we need not to have a same set of password standard for all the systems. And practically, if you see, that is not always the case as well. For
Okay.
example, you expect users to change passwords every 45 days or 90 days,
Hmm.
right? But you don't do this for the service accounts, right? So
True.
if you write one statement in your policy that I want all the passwords should be changed, right, or
Hmm.
shall be changed in 90 days, right? So that will not, you yourself will not comply with your own policy,
True.
right? So again, identifying the risks will also feed into developing a policy, right? So policy will have multiple inputs. Policy will have input from your legal, regulatory, and contextual requirements. Your customer may say that that they want to see, for example, they want people to attend a security awareness training once in 6 months.
Hmm.
Fine. So that has to be your organization policy as well, that we will conduct the security awareness once in 6 months.
True.
Fine.
I
But
agree.
let's say that's one of the customer
Hmm.
out of 100. Fine. So then your policy may simply say that we have to do this security awareness maybe annually and as per the specific business case, fine,
Business
or
case. Yeah.
the requirement.
Yeah.
Fine. So policy is taking the input from your legal, regulatory, and contextual requirements.
Hmm.
Fine. Policy is also updated or driven by the inputs from the risk assessment. Where you have the higher risk, you apply. See, what is a policy? Policy is a rule book or the law in my organization, we can say.
True.
Fine. So if I have a regulatory requirement, maybe GDPR or maybe any other regulatory requirement, any other contextual requirement, what is my way to communicate those requirements to my employees is a policy. So anything, any requirement that applies to my organization, whether it is legal, regulatory, contractual, or business, I should be capturing all requirements into the policy so that I can refer everyone to a single point of reference, that this is the policy, this is what everyone has to follow.
True.
I should not say, okay, follow this policy and also GDPR. People will get confused, and
True.
you will not be able to implement the requirements properly.
True. I
You
agree.
cannot expect people to move around and struggle with, okay, what are the other requirements of GDPR may have. And whatever the requirements you have, capture all requirements, all the expectations of the management into one document called policy.
Okay.
Policy can be a set of policies as well, but
Hmm.
some organizations, like, they had one large document having all the sections of the policy, like the people management, technical management, physical controls, and all. You can also have the topic specific policies. That's a separate topic. Fine. Again, Introduce now does not specify that how you have to define the policy, one document or a set of documents. So, but all my requirements has to be kept in the policy. I give you one more example. Let's say you have the policy for the internet usage, right? And you generally provide them the open access, right? Because let's say you have software development environment. So people require to access lots of kind of a knowledge-based knowledge articles over the
Hmm.
internet. So you cannot restrict them. Fine. If you restrict them, you're restricting the innovation. So in that environment, if you also open the cloud drives, Google
Hmm.
Drive, OneDrive, Dropbox, Box.com, fine. So then people may copy the code as well. So that's the intellectual property. Now you have to protect the intellectual property, but also have to provide the internet access to people. So now you cannot simply say the internet will be based on the business use only. Fine.
Agree.
One statement can also serve, but it's
True.
too high level that does not specify anything. So you need to cap. So now you see that access to this cloud drive is a risk to your business.
True.
Fine. So that you can capture as a policy requirement that these cloud drives shall not be accessible. Fine. Or
Okay.
the access to the cloud drive shall be restricted. So that the network team or the firewall team who is managing the firewall, when they define their process, they define their configuration standards, they refer to the policy, they know, okay, has to be blocked.
Hmm.
You don't need a separate communication to them. No, this block this. Fine. You put everything to the policy, what you expect, how you want to set up the controls into the organization. When you set putting this as a policy, people have access to the policy. They can see what they can access. Network team also, or the firewall team also has the access. They know what is to be, how it is to be configured, and what are the requirements of my policy on the network security. Fine. So it is all aligned, and you will have less friction in the organization. Otherwise, people will say, okay, I want to access this. Network team will say, no, you don't have. We cannot provide them.
Hmm.
Fine, we don't provide them. I need it for business. Why can't you provide it? How you will define that? Why I am not providing it? You see, you have this. They say, okay, show me the risk register. You cannot show this register to everyone, and
Agree.
they may say, okay, this risk is not applicable to my organization. So it's a easy way to communicate. See, this is our policy. This is what we follow, and this is what everyone has to follow. But in the policy, it is written this has to be blocked. So this is blocked. Simple. If you require exception, you go to the management, apply for the exception. So it simplifies everything.